Hi everybody and welcome to my latest video. In this video I'm going to be working on this little box. I picked this up from a second-hand shop where I go quite often just to see what kind of furniture they've got, and the reason I bought this is because I was thinking of a gift for my lovely in-laws, and this was supposed to be a Christmas gift. However, I was a bit sick before Christmas and I just didn't have the time to get round to doing it. And to be honest, it took me quite a long time to fully restore this and also make it into something that would be useful for them and hopefully a nice keepsake. So I think this box was, it is, I think, walnut. It's solid wood with a very thin veneer on it, and it's been quite sort of badly battered about over the years. And this cost me the grand total of £1 to buy. So obviously the condition's not going to be the best, but I can do something with this, and hopefully you will enjoy the process and you will enjoy the end result, and you may be surprised by what I turn this into. So thanks for watching and I hope you enjoy. This one will be more of a sympathetic restoration. It's got a lot of scratches and dints in that very thin veneer, so I can't be too aggressive with it, but it will look a million times better. This was lined with, I don't know whether it's a poem or a story, but if anybody knows what this story is, Jameson's Ride, please feel free to leave a comment. Right, now this bit, this bit is where you need to have patience when you do this job. It's the easiest of jobs to remove hinges, especially this small, unless the screws are absolutely jammed in there and they are stripped. And it may have even been a nail that somebody had put in there. So yeah, this probably took me in total about 35 minutes to actually remove these hinges. I was trying not to damage the box by just sort of going at it too strongly, but eventually I ended up breaking the top of the screw, trying to just prise it out, and then in the end I just ended up pulling the hinge over the top of the broken screw and then go at it with pliers. So yeah, this should have taken 2 minutes tops. Took me an age. Just when you think you've had your bad luck for the day, you try to take the locking mechanism out and have exactly the same problem with this. There's only 2 screws in it, one of them wouldn't come out. So I had to do the same with this. It took me ages to get to this point, and I ended up having to pull the lock over the broken screw and remove the screw with pliers again. Thankfully, this is the last of the hardware. I'm not too sure why somebody would have used the pages of a book to line this, and it did intrigue me a little bit as to what this used to be used for and by who. I needed to remove it just to do what I wanted to do with the box, so I shall let you just watch the process. The bottom of the box had some what looked like shelf supports really. I'm not too sure how useful a shelf would have been in there, but they needed to go for what I wanted to do, so just simply use a scraper to get behind that and gently pry it off. As I mentioned previously, the veneer on this little box was really thin, so I didn't want to use a sander to remove the existing finish. Best thing to do was to use paint stripper to get rid of most of the finish, and when that's done and dry and neutralised, I can then move on to sanding by hand.
Who's appeared at the door? What have you got? Have you got your teddy? Have you got Lenny? Who have you got? Have a look. Oh, lovely. What? Does he? I'm a bit busy, aren't I? Hmm? Yeah. You're a pest.
I'll be perfectly honest, it was me that broke that piece of wood, and I can't even remember how I did it because the hinges that I had the problem with were on the actual lid, not on the base. So I can't remember how I broke this. But anyway, I kept the chip of wood, and it's just a case of simply gluing it back in place, using a few clamps, and just waiting for it to dry. I'm not a huge fan of hand sanding, but needs must, and like I say, this veneer is very thin, so that's what I'm doing here. You can see me pointing out there some damage to the veneer, and I could have patched that, but what I thought was I'll do a complete strip right across the bottom rather than two tiny little repairs. And I wasn't too bothered really if it matched the rest of the wood. I thought either way it might look quite nice if it had like a little border with a different type of veneer. And in the end, it looked really good actually. But yeah, all I'm doing there is I'm scoring a straight line across the existing veneer. I'm trying to remove that carefully. My main goal here is to try and keep a straight edge to butt the new veneer up to, and that's all I'm doing, using this Stanley knife and then a bit of sandpaper. just for ease, I'm using this pre-glued edge banding. I think it's in walnut anyway. So, like I say, I wasn't sure whether this was walnut veneer on the box or mahogany veneer, but I was going to use this anyway because it was just quite easy to do. So you simply put that on, butt it up to the existing veneer on the box, and then get it started off by heating the end with the iron, and that will just melt the glue. You can then line it up and then use the iron right across the edge banding just to melt that glue into the wood. What I tend to do when the glue's still a little bit warm, I sand and let the sawdust sort of go into the glue, and that way you get a nice neat joint. And just to finish off, I sand at a 45-degree angle across the edge just to break the veneer and give a nice clean edge. I'm using my favourite brand of stain, which is Morel's, which is a spirit-based stain. And this time I'm using the colour teak, which is a nice brown tone to it. The bottom of the box had quite a lot of stains on it. I wanted it a darker colour anyway, so I decided to use the ebony. That would hide the stains, and it would also give me the contrast that I wanted. The hinges on the box were absolutely gone, so I had to replace those, but I wanted to try and repair the locking mechanism and the striker plate for the lock. The lock was never going to work, they didn't have a key, and it actually had something sort of rattling around in it, so I wanted to just get into that, and it had welds on it, so just use a little multi-tool with a grinding wheel to remove those welds and pop off the back, and there is the piece that was rattling around inside. I'm trying to straighten the brass here, and like I said there, I don't have an anvil, so I'm using a flat-sided hammer and a little hammer just to try and tap that brass into shape. Yeah, obviously I made a mistake there. I just went straight in with the hammer, and in hindsight what I should have done is just used a blowtorch or the heat gun just to try and warm that brass up so it was more sort of flexible rather than rigid. Fortunately, the way it broke, I had a screw hole in one side and 2 screw holes in the other. So the plan was just to straighten both of those out, join them together on the box, and screw them both in independently of each other. Once they were as straight as I could get them, it was just simply a case of giving them a good clean with some brass metal polish. As this was a gift, I wanted to personalise it, so I used my Laser Pekka 2 laser. Really easy to use, and it's all lap based. So I centred it and just set it going. I quite liked the image that I'd done, and the engraving, it had gone quite deep, and I just wanted it to pop a little bit, so I sprayed it with gold so that would go into the engraved part, and then I was just going to sand the top of it so it'd leave the gold in the engraving. What I should have done is I shouldn't have stained the box until I'd done this step, but it was okay. I just sanded it back and then I restained it after I'd done it. As I said at the start of the video, this is a gift for my in-laws and I wanted this to be useful for them. So I am converting it into something that will be of use. Some of you may have already guessed that, what it may be from the engraving. I didn't think of that when I was putting the video together. It was supposed to be a surprise at the end, but what I'm doing now is I am making some inserts for the box. I've just used the bandsaw to cut some little runners for those dividers, and then I'm using this track saw, which is a new tool for me, just to make those dividers. And it's just a case of measure and measure and measure and then cut, and you have some really nifty dividers. The next thing I needed to do was to mark where I wanted the divider support to go. So all I'm doing here is using the dividers as a template, marking up where they want to go, and that will give me an idea when I stick these little dividers to the side of the box. It was suitable just to put some masking tape on to hold those in place while they dried, rather than having to clamp. They weren't heavy and they weren't structural in any way. So yeah, that's the divider separators all in place, ready to go. I wanted the dividers to match the colour of the engraving that I'd previously done, so I decided to spray them in this gold colour. For the top coat on this, I'm using a clear acrylic lacquer. This is in a satin finish, and the piece in total, I think, had 4 coats. Just make sure on each coat you don't over apply the lacquer. By that I mean don't have it too thick, don't have the can too close to the wood as you're doing it. Just build it up in stages and you will get a lovely finish. All I'm doing here is using a little LED light just to check the quality of the finish. Just make sure I haven't missed anything, no bits in it, no runs or anything like that. And great tip just to check the finish of your piece. The next step was to deal with the bottom of the box. I could have left it wood, but I just wanted to finish it off with a nice piece of new felt. And that way it just avoid any scratches to any worktops or anything like that. So really simply, mask off the edges where you don't want the glue to go, cut the felt to size and stick it down. Because I wanted this to be a useful piece of furniture, I wanted to put a little pull on the top just so you could use it to lift the lid up and down, and I've got a load of vintage pulls from old pieces of furniture. So I found a suitable one for this, just measured it up, drilled a pilot hole and then screwed it in. We're coming up to the end of this little project that turned into be quite a big project. Hopefully you've enjoyed what you've watched and the process, and you may have learnt some things along the way. If you do like this kind of content and you like the stuff that I do, please consider subscribing, hit the thumbs up button and press the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. Thanks for watching.